This podcast may contain themes that are not appropriate for younger ears. Sorry, kids. Listener discretion advised.
Whoa! Hey, dudes and dudettes. Remember waking up on Saturday mornings, pouring a little milk on your fave cereal, and plopping down in front of the old tube to watch your favorite cartoon shows? Yeah. Did mom and dad buy you all the action figures and toys you wanted? Did you dress up like your favorite character for Halloween? Hang Mondo posters all over your walls? Yeah, that was bodacious. And then, remember when you had to grow up and life wasn't nearly as fun? It started ragdolling you with needing to pay your mortgage and taxes, and you had to foot the bill to buy your favorite cereal and milk, leaving you all shell-shocked and stuff? Whoa, that was a total bummer. But then, a bunch of you got together and started sharing the love for your favorite characters, comics, and shows. Hundreds of thousands of you started pouring into fan conventions every year and helped build a multi-billion-dollar industry, which was totally radical. Hey, as long as you're still facing your responsibilities as a mom, a dad, a boss, or a sensei, I say you hang 10 and duck dive into a little nostalgia right now. Because those days were totally tubular. Cowabunga!
How about some Cap'n Crunch or Frankenberry? Pour you a big old bowl, cause we are going there. Taboo topics are back on the table.
Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to another Season 3 episode of the Going There podcast. This is one that the joy is bursting through the seams. First of all, we are here in the media capital of the world, Burbank, California. And it's very fitting because the person we have here in studio with us has worked at many of the thousands of studios that have existed in this area for a long time in Tinseltown. And so we are going to talk about all of these things that hopefully will give you the feels and maybe we'll learn a thing or two. So I am so excited to introduce somebody who I watched or at least heard his voice through so much of my growing years as a young person. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you, man. Yeah. And hey, kids, my name is Townsend Coleman, and I are a voice actor. That's me.
You are not a voice actor. You are the voice actor.
Oh,
and
dude.
And look, I'm saying this because you are actually a very down-to-earth, humble guy. So let me brag for you for a second, okay? That's all right.
Right.
Just blush a little bit. I'm at least going to brag for you by resume, okay? You were the voice of Michelangelo from the OG Ninja Turtles cartoon.
Right.
You were the voice of The Tick before there was a show on Fox and before there was an Amazon show. You were the voice of Rewind from the Transformers. Anybody who grew up in my era, you collected Rewind was the one with the cassette tape. I mean, that was awesome. You were the voice of NBC's Must See TV. That era of television was gigantic. Those were the years of like the Seinfelds and Friends and everything else. You were the lead character in the Teen Wolf show that they had. You were Waldo in Where's Waldo? For those of you who remember that short-lived cartoon.
That's why I have my Waldo shoes on today.
Perfect. We found him, and he's sitting in a red chair. Gave him away.
Right here.
Plus, too many to name, but just for those of you who are like, oh my God, get ready to say, oh my God, even more. Additional voices in just about every show, film, and cartoon from our childhoods, from the Batman animated series, Superman, Inspector Gadget, Animaniacs, Ferngully, Fraggle Rock, Captain Planet. My good God, man, how do you still have a voice?
I don't really know. It's been a long time.
You don't seem like a guy who's been doing it for that long. Wow. Just wow. Okay. I'll stop blowing smoke. Let me ask you, how'd you get into voice acting?
Well, sir, I got into it. Basically, I was a rock and roll DJ back in Cleveland for 10 years and also an actor.
What station were you at? Were you
Oh
at
gosh,
MMS?
I was at 5 different radio stations over that 10 years. But last station I was at was started out as Zip 106 and then turned into Light Rock 106 and a half. I have no idea what it is now. I was at G98, did production there and a number of air shifts. I was at Disco 92 in 1976 and 77.
I was going to lie and say, yeah, I remember when disco came back in the mid 90s.
Well, you weren't even born then. So, yeah. So, but I mean, you know, that was my era from 1974 to 84. But I was also an actor in Cleveland and I'd always wanted to get into acting and was just trying to figure out what can I do in Cleveland that kind of would scratch that itch. So I did anything that had to do with creativity like that. I was modeling. I did a lot of modeling in Cleveland. Was a DJ. I was on TV there on Channel 5. Back then, they used to have a thing called the Morning Exchange and then the Afternoon Exchange. And I was on the Afternoon Exchange, going out doing live interviews with bands and stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
On the air, yeah. And I was pulling the Ohio lottery numbers on TV every night for a year or two. So, yeah, so I was just trying to do anything I could think of in the entertainment business in Cleveland and did a lot of theater as well. Last show I did there was the Pirates of Penzance. I did out at Berea Summer Theater at Baldwin Wallace College. But how I got into voice acting specifically was when I was on the air at the last radio station that I was at. That's where I fell into doing freelance voiceover because I was the production director at the radio station, and which meant that I had to write and produce and voice the local radio spots that we ran on the station. But I started getting calls from ad agencies in Cleveland asking me if I would voice their May Company spot or Hallie's or Higbee's or whatever.
Yeah.
Uncle Bill's. And so I would go into a studio in downtown Cleveland and voice it and then get paid apart from the radio station. And I thought, this is interesting. You know, what weird world are we talking about now that I can actually get paid, you know, to do these voiceovers?
Were you already kind of doing characters in some of these?
So in 1978 and early 79, I was doing morning drive at a radio station in Akron. It was an AM Top 40 station, and I was doing morning drive, and so I started doing characters there, and you know, just out of sheer boredom, and so I started doing bits on the air as characters, and I would do these 2 voice bits where during a record I would run into the production studio and I would voice the characters' lines and put it on cart, and then come back in, and coming out of the song or the spots, I would put the card in and then start talking along with myself.
My good God, the kind of pressure. I mean, I know that
it was a blast.
I know that broadcast and live entertainment is a whole different set of skills, but yeah, I guess if you're the program manager, who's going to tell you suck or you're fired or something crazy like that?
So I started doing some character stuff there, and it just sort of kind of grew out of that. Finally, after a couple of years, I was making more money a year doing my freelance voiceover work than I was working 6 days a week at the radio station. It just didn't make any sense to me. So I quit radio and got out of that after a decade, and was just planning on staying in Cleveland and working in the, you know, that sort of tri-state area, you know, Detroit, Columbus, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and doing my freelance voiceover work that way. And that was going to be my life. But I'd always had this dream of moving either to New York or Los Angeles. And I'd already checked out New York and because I was really keen on wanting to do Broadway. And then decided that New York probably wasn't for me, even though that's where I was born. But I thought, nah, you know what? I think probably if I ever do move out of Cleveland, it'd be to the West Coast. Well, as it just so happened, just several weeks after I quit the radio station, so I was married and had 3 kids at the time, got a call from the landlord saying, I'm selling the house and you're going to have to move by the end of September. Now, this was in June or early July of 1984. And I thought, I'll be darned. If I've got to move, I'll be damned if I'm going to move across town. I'm getting out of here.
This is your sign.
And I had just turned 30, and so I thought I'm going out to L.A., and which I did right after the Olympics of '84, and found a place out here to rent. And literally 2 weeks later, we were living here, and I knew one person. But I thought, if I don't do this now, I'll never do it. And I don't want to get to the, end of my days saying, I wish I had just taken that shot, And so I came out here and I just got super, super lucky,
Well, yes. It doesn't matter how much talent you have. Luck is part of it. It's like trying to get struck by lightning. Yeah. However, talent is a big part of it.
For sure.
And you are a very, very talented guy.
Oh, thanks, man.
You would think I was a smoker, all this smoke I'm blowing your way, but I truly mean this. You and I met for the first time. So Bobby Thomas, who is my good friend, who's been working on the podcast since the very beginning, he's running the board.
There he is.
Coincidentally,
there he is.
He's from Cleveland. I'm from Cleveland. You're from Cleveland.
And this man is one of my best friends. Yeah. And we worked together at that last radio station that I was talking about. Yeah. Light Rock. And we worked together for 5 years or so at that station. And both did a lot of production, did a lot of voiceovers there.
Was he the one who was out here when you moved out here?
No.
Because I know Bobby lived in L.A. 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years after.
Yeah. I think I was the one who was trying to get BT to move out here.
Yeah.
Which he finally did.
Bobby's been on a few episodes.
Oh,
another
my gosh.
Extremely, extremely talented actor
kidding.
And especially voice actor.
Yep,
you hear his voice in lots of the episodes.
Yep.
When I'm like, this is above my pay grade, Bobby does some character work for us. But Bobby introduced me to you 2 or 3 years ago. We went out to lunch, and like it's almost comical how you asked all these questions about the projects we were doing. And I'm just like, me and the little rascals are doing these rinky-dink projects. Here I'm sitting across from freaking my entire childhood and telling them about like these stupid mini film projects. Of course, none of them are stupid. They're all very near and dear to me. But that just shows so much about your character as a person. And that really is important. And I think, yes, luck is part of it. But as somebody who works in production, who hasn't done the high-end stuff that you've done over the years, like, it's a family, right? Like Bobby,
sure.
like you can't choose your actual family, but you sure as hell can choose the family that you're going to work. Like, you really do bond with these people, and a creative space cannot have that kind of ego and animosity that we've all seen, we've all worked with, and we definitely know about stories. But people like you, people like Bobby, I just feel like there's that little extra push beyond luck and talent that goes. And also, they're just good people, and we want to work with them.
Well, that's the thing. And Matt, I got to tell you, so when I came out here, I didn't come out here to do voiceover. I came out here to be an on-camera actor. Right. I wanted to do movies and TV. And I was having a really hard time trying to find a theatrical agent for that. But I got very lucky in getting a commercial agent for voiceovers and on-camera commercials. Pretty much straight away, I landed an agent within 2 weeks of getting out here. Yeah. And if I think about that, and I think if that hadn't happened, you look back and you think, well, if this hadn't happened, it's like if that landlord in Cleveland hadn't called me and said, I'm selling the house, you're going to have to move, I would probably still be in Cleveland.
I would hate that for you.
Oh, yeah, well.
As somebody who still lives there, I love Cleveland, but it's a love-hate relationship, right?
Right. But I just hate moving.
Right.
Yeah. And so I probably would have just, made the most of it back there. But yeah, you look at your life and you think, well, if this hadn't happened and that hadn't happened, think how things would be so different right now, and but I have to say, so when I came out here and was looking for an agent, got this commercial agent right away. I can never get this adage straight, but it's when opportunity meets.
Oh yeah.
So you know what I'm.
Yeah.
So preparation, and you're ready for that opportunity when it comes along. Forgive me, I'm not only playing stupid, but I'm genuinely stupid. When I left the radio station, I put together a really good demo of my voiceover stuff with the idea that I was going to move to LA someday. And so here I was out here, and I had this great tape that was fresh, and I knew it was competitive. And I left it with the on-camera agent that I had interviewed with. And he said, the voiceover agent isn't here right now. He's out at lunch. But if you leave it with me, I'll make sure he listens to it. And I was like, great, thanks. And so I was on my way back to my house. When I got back to my house, there was a message on my answering machine from the voiceover agent. And he said, hey, this is so-and-so, and I just want you to know I just listened to your tape, and I just want to say, please, whatever you do, don't sign with anybody until you come talk to me.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, cool. Okay. So I went in the next day and I met with him, and he's still my agent to this day.
Wow.
Yeah. So 40 plus years later.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's actually really cool.
Yeah. Well, and what's cool about it is that I discovered fairly quickly that it was the voice actors and the people who were in the voiceover, community, which was very small out here at the time, that were really super down to earth people. It wasn't like the on-camera actors who, I don't know why, but just had more of an ego and more attitude. And it was more, dog eat dog. And I'm competitive for sure, but I don't like being a jerk, and I don't like walking over people, to try and get what I want. And I found that by and large, the voice actors that I met were really, truly, genuinely cool people. They're, they're down to earth and kind and generous and giving. And I thought, this is my community. This is my people, not the on-camera stuff so much. So I did do a bunch of on-camera commercials, but I quit even pursuing the theatrical stuff altogether. And then finally quit pursuing, and this is after only about 5 or 6 years out here, quit pursuing the on-camera commercials altogether, just because the voiceover thing was just...
It's so much easier, right?
Well, it's so much easier. Yeah, you don't have to worry about what you look like or what you're wearing or, It's just,
That's got to be part of the level of the lack of ego with some of those people, because the lack of vanity, right?
Yeah,
like you're not trying to be the sexiest person on camera. You just need to have that sexy voice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
Didn't even occur to me, but yes, I think you're absolutely right.
I mean, maybe it's my guess. I like to hypothesize. I'm probably full of crap. Oftentimes in our lives, we don't realize we're living the good times until they're past. And we're talking about all these projects. Ninja Turtles was on TV for quite a bit of time, Transformers, these projects. Did you ever realize you were in a magical time when you were in it? Or was it, because what a lot of people don't realize is it's a 9-to-5 for you in a sense. It's a job.
Yeah.
You still have to worry about bills and getting your groceries and making sure someone gets the kids and all this. Was there ever a moment where you're like, ooh, I can actually feel the magic?
Oh, heavens, yes. I mean, I would say that most of the time when I got to go into a studio, which was often, I had a number of gigs over the years that had a standing session at particular studios around town.
A decent amount of them were probably right here in Burbank, right?
Yeah. Like, for instance, I was the voice of Home Depot for a whole bunch of years, 7 or 8 years. And I had a standing session over at LA Studios every morning at 9:00, and that retail stuff was just crazy great. But I think mostly all all the gigs that I had and all the jobs that I had, I was very aware of how blessed I was and how lucky and fortunate I was to be working the way I was working. Now, I will say that as an actor, I'm also insecure, so there would be lulls in my career. There would be slow spells where I would start to panic and think, oh my gosh, it's over. I'm not booking anymore, but then it would, it's all cyclical.
Sure.
And you, after a while, you become aware of that. And, depending on who you are and kind of what makes you tick and your own spirituality or personality that will help you cope with specific situations, like, for instance, when things do slow down, how do you weather those storms? But yes, I was well aware of just how lucky I was. But I think that most voice people that I know that I have worked with over the years, especially the ones who are very successful, are well aware of how fortunate they are and how quickly it could come to an end as well. I think that was probably the biggest thing that I had to kind of learn and deal with, was you can get lulled into this sense that, oh my gosh, this is great. This is going to go like this forever. And then when it does start to slow down, and especially as you get older and you realize things aren't quite as active as they used to be, and then you get even older and then they're really not active. I remember, Matt, when I had been here maybe about 4 or 5 years, and I was working with some of my heroes and meeting some of my voiceover heroes. Like when I was on the radio and a production director at the last station we were at, I would get these tapes in from national ad agencies, with Ernie Anderson on it, with Chuck Riley on it, with Mark Elliott on it, with Danny Dark on it, these great voices. And except for Ernie Anderson, who I knew because he was Ghoulardi, growing up with Ghoulardi, I didn't know most of who these guys were. So I had to do some research and find out who they were, so I would attach names to some of these voices and go, oh my gosh, what an amazing voice. What an amazing read that was, So I would try and copy these guys. Well, I'm no mimic and I'm certainly no impressionist. And sometimes the things that I'll tell when I teach voiceover, if it's cartoon characters, I'll say, just rip somebody off, just steal, their stuff. Because unless you're a phenomenal impressionist, you're not going to end up sounding like them anyway. So what you're going to end up finding is that you're borrowing bits and pieces of, various different people and kind of taking them on for yourself. And that's how you develop your own style and your own sound. Yeah. So I remember back then thinking, here I am working with, Danny Dark and Ernie Anderson and, these Chuck Riley, these great guys, and, being in at the same agency with some of them and getting to chat with them in the lobby when you're in for an audition. I would basically read 2 different kinds of people. The kind of guy, and I'm speaking just about guys right now, but it's not solely men, it's women too, but in my case I was talking to so many of these guys, and basically boiled down to 2 different kinds of guys who recognized their good fortune and how blessed they were, and they were grateful for it, and they had a great attitude, and when things started to slow down for them, they were very circumspect about it, and they took it all with kind of a grain of salt. And you could tell that they were just thankful, just grateful for the years that they had of success. Right. The other kind of guy was the kind of guy who was very successful, but didn't have that gratitude and didn't know how to be thankful and really be able to count their blessings and recognize how good they had it, and that now it's slowing down and there's really not a lot you can do about it. And so I recognized that it's going to slow down for everybody. I'd see these guys hitting their 60s and 70s, and some of them were, still working, and others not. And the ones who weren't and who were not grateful for the career that they'd had were going down in balls of flames, and in some cases drinking themselves to death or whatever, but just having lousy attitudes, and they were just curmudgeons, and unhappy and bitching and moaning about everything. The other half was the guys who recognized how good they had it, and they were just grateful. And I think of somebody like Gary Owens, and I would talk to Gary, and you could just sense from this man just how grateful he was for the life that he had.
Yeah,
and I remember making a mental note back then, saying, Townsend, whatever you do, recognize the fact that this is going to happen to you someday. It slows down for everybody.
Yeah.
And everybody stops working at some point. Even the most talented, most wealthy, most whatever, guys in this business. It happens to all of them. And so, it's up to you to decide how you want to go out.
That advice that you just gave, that philosophy for living life, applies to so much of all of it, not just your realm of voice acting.
No.
And the more gratitude you have,
yep,
the easier it is to get along with other people, to not be cutthroat, to still be competitive. And most importantly, you touched on it. I think the unintended consequence of it, that is a beautiful thing, is when it lulls, you aren't like, oh my God, the sky's falling, because you know that nothing lasts forever. There is no permanence.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
And on top of that, have you ever gotten so sick where you go, this is it. This is just life now. You can't remember what it was like to be healthy 5 days ago.
That's right.
And I think that's what happens when people, they stake their entire fulfillment of their life on their current status.
Yeah.
And a hard lesson that many of us have had to learn over the years, myself included, and I keep relearning, is there is no permanence. Like,
that's right.
Everything you think you have and everything that you want and everything that you think makes you could lose it all. How do you move past that? And gratitude is, psychologists, pastors, rabbis, everybody will tell you gratitude.
It's everything. It's everything. Yeah. Now, I will say that it has taken me, and I'm still learning it.
It never ends.
Okay. But, any number of, agents that I've had or guys that I've worked with, will tell you that, oh yeah, I remember a time when you weren't so much like that,
Sure.
So this is something that, I've been growing into my whole career.
Yeah.
And, it's like when I lost NBC, I was at NBC for 16 years. I was voicing all their must-see TV promos, the comedy ones, and the Tonight Show promos for Jay Leno every night. And I'll tell you, that was a hard gig to lose. It was the best gig I ever had, you know?
That steady income?
Well, it's not just a steady income, but it was a family.
Yeah.
I worked with these people every single day for 16 years, So to lose that was like, it felt like losing not just a family member, but my entire family.
Yeah.
And that was hard, and having to try and, make tracks through that time was very, very difficult. And, there were times when I wasn't so grateful, and
Sure.
when I was angry, and I was pissed off. And so, but it's live and learn.
Look, yeah, exactly. And you have, more years on the earth, and you've learned and become even wiser. The one thing I know is you can never stop learning those lessons. It's the good and bad of it is you're going to continue, because we go through phases. We're human.
Yeah.
There are times where I'm like, I was really cocky about that. And I got my comeuppance, and it just happens.
Exactly.
It just happens.
Yeah.
But I think you have an amazing attitude, and give yourself credit. You're human. We all slip. We all fall back into bad behaviors, and it's just part of the cycle. I want to talk about the fun stuff, but I feel like first we have to talk about the less fun stuff.
Oh, no. Why?
We're going to take a pout break. We'll be right back after these messages. The industry has changed and for the worse.
Oh, yeah.
And I can say that objectively, being on the outside of it. I know how it works and talking to Bobby all the time. From your point of view, what is happening? How has it become such a different animal?
Well, for me personally, and for everybody I know in the voiceover world, it doesn't look anything like it did back in the mid 80s, up through about the mid 2000s. Maybe not even that long. Maybe the last 15, 20 years of the 80s and 90s. It used to be a people business. It used to be face-to-face relationships. I knew the writers and the producers at ad agencies. I would go to ad agencies and audition. We would go down to our agent's office and audition. They had 3 studios down there where we would actually go in and do our auditions. So we got to see each other, being the other actors. We got to see our agents every single day. We got to we were working, and so we were going into studios and you're working, one-on-one with the producers and stuff. So it was a relationship business. Now it's all anonymous. Everything is done out of our house. All the auditions are done, not directed, so you're just, shooting in the dark, trying to figure out what they might want. And there are a million more people doing it now because technologically you can. As long as you got a laptop, a mic, and a set of headphones and a good internet connection, you could be working from anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And people are.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that back then. Back then, when I first got here, which I sort of think of as the golden age of voiceover, the 80s and 90s, man, it's like the community was small. You knew everybody. You knew who your competition was because they were your friends,
While I'm sure there's a little bit of like, if you were both up for a role, it'd be like, oh man, he got it. But you're still happy for that person.
Exactly. Yeah. Now I'll get emailed a piece of copy from my agent that I've got to get in by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. And so I go in my closet studio and I'll put together this audition based on the specs that they're talking about at the bottom of the page. And I've got nobody I can ask, say, is that kind of what you were thinking? Because one of the things that I prided myself, and one of the reasons why I think I was successful in the way that I was, is I don't have a particularly great voice. I don't have a really distinctive voice, like an Ernie Anderson or somebody like that. What I was banking on was my versatility.
Yeah.
And my ear. And that I could, and my ability to be able to translate for myself what the producer was saying they were looking for. And I'm going in my head, oh, okay, I get it. Well, without that producer's voice, without somebody saying, this is what I'm looking for, and it's just written on a piece of paper. You really are just, you're kind of spitting into the wind.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating, plus, like I said, there's so many more people doing it now. Plus, I'm the old guy now. I'm going on 72 this year. And, but I still got my talent. I've still got a ton of energy. I feel like I could still do it. Everything that I've ever done, I could still do over again, but they don't want that. They want something different. So I use my ear to try and approximate what I think they're looking for these days. But you don't know because you've got nobody to ask.
Right.
So that's how it's changed for me and all my compadres. And they all complain about the exact same thing.
Yeah. The human connection is gone, and that
it's gone.
Like that, the collaboration is what makes all this art.
Gosh, Matt,
right?
You're so right.
Yeah. And then on top of that, your competition now isn't the other voice guys. It's either amateurs, AI, or celebrities.
Yes. Well, it was always celebrities.
Well, yeah, but I think now more than ever.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so I grew up with like Aladdin and The Lion King and The Little Mermaid and all these. They were all no names. They were voice people.
Right.
Now it's The Little Mermaid starring fill in the blank.
Yep.
Like the Disney movies, even just animated movies, they are all star pictures.
Yeah.
So the Townsends of the world are no longer doing the lead voice in this because they're like, the only way we're going to get people to watch it is by making sure they know Zendaya is the star of this show or something.
Right.
So I know it's always been there, but I have to imagine it's gotten worse.
Oh, it's horrible like that. Yeah.
Anything else? Is there another realm of competition I didn't name there?
Well, you mentioned AI, and AI, I think, is just pure evil.
I agree.
In the way it's taken over. I mean, there are so many actors now who are, boycotting this, that, and the other thing because of the whole AI threat.
Yeah.
And we see, how fast it's grown in the last 6 months. Much less the last, year or two, and how quickly it's just going to be taking over. They're faking on camera actors. Used to be that you could fake the voiceover stuff pretty easily.
And that was just a couple of years ago.
Right.
Like that's how, it is. I just saw yesterday, Chris Pratt was doing an interview. I don't know if it was at the red carpet. He's got a new film coming out.
Yeah.
And they had asked him about the AI thing. And he said, I hope I'm right, but basically you cannot fake heart. Like there is a connection. And I hope that's how this plays out.
See, and I hear that same argument.
Yeah.
You can't fake that.
Humanity cannot be mimicked. Like
right.
I just feel like even in
lived
even from
experience,
voice,
you can't conjure up in a computer form. But I will say that one thing that I've noticed over the years is that as commercials have changed so much, for instance, in the voiceover realm, we used to complain about, some of these amateurs that were coming along, when they were looking for a very conversational read, they were just looking for like real people and stuff. We felt like you were losing that professionalism, what sounded, and I don't mean the fake professionally, not like the Gary Owens,
right.
But you were losing the real true creativity. You were just getting, people coming along, just being sloppy and just talking. And we would say, yeah, but people know the difference and they're never going to buy that. No, they bought that. And now that's what they're used to. So what I think is probably going to happen with AI is that while we all say it can't replicate or duplicate heart or come up with that humanness, that only humans have, it can get pretty darn close.
They can mimic the amateurs.
Exactly. And so people are going to get used to that. We're hearing it all the time in voiceover now.
Or especially if there's a commercial where it's voice only and it's an athlete. Like that's my favorite because you could always tell when it's an athlete.
Yeah, right.
Because it's like, I really like to go buy this phone because it's my favorite phone. You're like, what?
Right.
Am I supposed to recognize this person by voice?
Right.
Come on.
Right. Yeah. So I think AI is a huge threat.
I don't want to go too deep down that
rabbit hole because
it's depressing. It's different than anything we've experienced in human evolution because, for example, during the Industrial Revolution, everyone's like, what are we going to do? We're not going to be able to make money. And it's like, well, yeah, but no, you will. It's just we're going to have to stop being, agricultural and learn industrial skills. You can learn to do this. When they started building robots for automation, it's like, what? Now this robot's going to take my job. Yeah, but you can learn how to be the person who works on the robots or who does this. AI is literally replacing humans. It is different than any other time. It's not like the caveman who invented the wheel. Yes, it changes the entire industry, but now you find a new way to evolve and adapt to find skills to work in that. AI is saying, you don't need to adapt. We're going to do it. You just go home, put your head down.
That's right.
That doesn't work. Obviously, we could talk all day about it. Greed will drive everything. I think it's horrible that people keep investing in not AI for quantum mechanics and things like that. That's what it's there for. That's awesome. Like somebody said something to the effect of, I want AI to like do my dishes, not play the guitar for me. Like, you know, it's like the art is not the thing we need replaced on.
Right.
Like, do the boring stuff, do my taxes.
Yeah. When you get to the point where, you know, the top songs on the charts aren't even real people.
Yeah.
They aren't even real songs. They are real songs because people are digging them, you know.
But there's zero art in it.
Yeah.
You can't even say from a coding standpoint there is art, because it is, you know, there might be art in building the AI infrastructure, but that's where it ends.
But people are digging them.
And that is such a problem, and I just wish people cared. So again, the sad stuff. The happy stuff, to an extent, is you're talking about this wonderful time, and I'm really happy to hear that you knew it was the good time when it was the good time. On the flip side, your audience, who you, as a voice guy, you rarely get to connect with, right? Like they consume it, you hope they like it, but you're not really working with them. We're nostalgic for that time too. You and I were just talking about this before we started taping. I am in your demographic, right?
Yeah,
like
right.
I was a little kid when Ninja Turtles came out. I was a young kid when Transformers was on. Like, I was in that. You personally were a part of my developmental stage. So I'm going to have my therapist call you and blame you for all of my problems.
Cool.
But nostalgia, for better or worse, I don't know that it's all good. I don't think too much of anything is all good, right? But nostalgia has become a multi-billion-dollar industry. And in the times where we're talking about unprecedented things like AI, like this level of nostalgia is also unprecedented. We as humans, especially in the lifetimes that you, me, our parents, our grandparents, everyone was fond of yesteryear, right? We romanticize things about the past. But like when San Diego started doing the Comic-Con, they now have over 130,000 people who are in attendance during those Comic-Cons. And now every city, if not, you know, every single township or everything, has some kind of version of that. You know, there's WizardCon, there's GamerCon, there's all these different conventions. And that has become a major staple. And again, I don't think it's all good. I love that people are connecting with these characters and these things. I'm sad because I think some of it is, those were the good days, because today, objectively speaking, is not great.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that's why nostalgia is so big right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's because of so much of the, you know, the trouble and the turmoil in the world, you know, that we live in. There doesn't seem to be a lot of joy out there.
Yeah.
You know, not a lot of happiness, not a lot of lightness, not a lot of togetherness.
It's the human connection.
Yeah.
The same thing that got ripped out of your industry has been ripped out of it across the board with social media and everything.
Yeah.
And it's sad. But the happy thing is, now you have a brand new experience where you were the guy in the booth and you got that great connection. Now you're connecting with the people on the other side you never got to connect with.
Exactly.
How did you get into doing Comic-Cons?
So my Ninja Turtle buddies, Rob Paulson and Cam Clark, Barry Gordon, and Renee Jacobs, who was April O'Neil, the five of us go out, generally the five of us, sometimes Renee doesn't join us, but so it really started with, you know, Jess Harnell Jess was a wacko on Animaniacs and just a million other characters, but Jess is just prolific, and he's got a very good friend named Jeff Zanini, and Jess was starting to do these Comic-Cons and needed an agent, and so he talked to his buddy Jeff about it, and so Jeff started an agency, and because Jess and Rob Paulson were on Animaniacs together and very good friends, Jess was telling Rob that he should be doing these Comic-Cons. So then when Rob started doing the Comic-Cons himself, he was also at the time doing his own podcast called Talkin' Tunes. And he
Cool.
got us together, the Ninja Turtle guys, and April, and Sue Blue, the director, and Pete Renaday, who was Master Splinter. We all went and did Rob's podcast at the John Lovett's Comedy Club up at City Walk here in town. And we had so much fun doing that. And boy, you talk about the nostalgia. The place was packed. And these fans were just rabid and just loved this experience. And we all went, whoa, this is kind of interesting. And so Rob took us out to dinner and asked us if we would be willing to go do these Comic-Cons together. Of course, we were all on board. And so we started doing that. That was about 12 years ago. And we've just been doing it ever since.
How often do you do them now?
It depends on the year. This past year, we did, I think, 15 of them.
And they're multi-day things, right? A lot of them are.
Yeah, most of them are 3-day cons. Some are 2-day cons. Yeah. And so our agent, Jeff, he's the one that books us. He, gets offers from cons all around the world, actually. And he says, are you guys free this particular weekend to go to this particular city? And do you have any interest? Do you want to? And so we, those of us who can say yes, and those of us who can't say no. And if the con wants all of us, then we don't do it,
Right.
if we can't all make it. But yeah, so that's how that started. And, just knock on Formica, man. I just want to keep that going because it's my connection to, it's sort of sad to put it like this, but it's sort of my connection to what I used to do.
Yeah.
And it's my connection to some very happy times and very really lovely times, but more than anything, Matt, it's the people, it's the fans.
Yeah.
Back when we were doing these shows, back when we were doing Ninja Turtles in the beginning, we of course had no idea it was going to turn into what it did.
No, I've watched documentaries with I can't think of their names, the guys who started it. And it's just
Kevin
kind of
Eastman and Peter Laird.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, we thought this was going to be some pulp comic-y, like goofy thing that people are going to be like, no.
Well, let me tell you. So Rob Paulson and I were working on a show called Fraggle Rock. Back in those days in 1986, and we were doing we had to do voice matches for the animated series because the guys on the original Fraggle Rock, the Muppet version of it, either couldn't or didn't want to do the animated version. So they were looking for voice matches. So I happened to get the character of Gobo, and also Architect and Wrench on this. Rob was Boober and Marjorie the Trash Heap and others. At any rate, we were working on Fraggle Rock, and our voice director, a guy named Stu, came in one morning to one of our sessions, and he said, "You guys aren't going to believe what I'm going to be casting and directing next." He pulls out a Ninja Turtle comic book out of his briefcase and shows it to us, and I'd never heard of it before.
Right.
Then I took one look at the title, and I said, "Yeah, well, good luck with that."
It was like Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Like, you're just like, this will be a flash in the pan, right?
Right. And that's what I thought it would be. He brought us into audition.
Yeah.
We auditioned for it, got parts on it. And, so there we were working on the show and really having no idea that it was going to, take off the way it did and go on to still be alive today with all these other, animated iterations of it.
That you've returned for some of them.
For the 2012 series, we did. Yeah. So Rob Paulson was Raphael on our original series, but he was Donatello on the 2012 version. And so the producers, the creators of that version of it for Nickelodeon were big fans of our original series.
Yeah.
And so they came up with this idea of doing trans-dimensional turtles and brought us in for a couple episodes where it was a crossover thing.
Yeah.
And it was such a blast to do,
I bet.
But yes, of course, we had no idea it was going to take off the way it did. And so back in those days, we really had no way of interacting with fans. we would get fan mail occasionally sent to the studio,
Under Dear Michelangelo, probably.
Right, exactly. And that they would bring, when that happened, they would bring it to our recording sessions and, or they would read a particular, fan letter that was just a generic fan letter to the show.
Yeah.
But that was the extent of it. We just, unless we had friends who had kids who watched the show, that was different. But no real connection with the fans. The wonderful thing about these Comic-Cons is that we get to meet the fans who are 44 now, 47, who were big, and they got their own families, and they've got their own, 3 kids and their wife, and that they bring along to the shows. And we get to hear their stories. We get to hear what it was about Ninja Turtles that meant so much to them, or how it impacted them sometimes in some cases. Well, without these Comic-Cons, we'd have no way of knowing any of that. And that has been, gosh, you talk about a blessing. That has, it probably impacted me in this kind of last half of my life more than, other than my kids and grandkids, and a couple of good close friends that I have. This is probably the most impactful thing in my life now.
And you know what? That's kind of like a return of the favor, because you created that for those people, for me and many of us years back.
Yeah.
That is such an exchange of positive energy.
Wow.
And that's beautiful.
Wow. It's so funny. That's such a simple idea, but I never looked at it like that. Thanks for saying that, Matt. Yeah, it's so true.
Your attitude about appreciating all of it is what makes it so great. I get very woo-woo. I'm not even trying to be woo-woo in saying this. They connected with it because your heart and soul was in the character, and they I don't that will not happen with AI. They might have nostalgic and happy times of watching that with their friends or something, but there is a connection that I think it's an intangible thing we cannot put our fingers on. And I think you are now getting to experience kind of the return on that investment of soul and time and blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It is awesome, man. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah. When you went to do the character of Michelangelo, were they ever like, he's kind of a stoner, but we can't say he's a stoner? Or was it like, you're a surfer dude? Just like, where did that inspiration come from? Was that all you? Because like before the voice, and I'm sure some of the scripts, like how much of that was you going, especially if you're in California, you're like, I know these guys. Right. They're all like, hey man,
right.
Like where did that come from?
I wish I could take credit for it. I can't, except for the fact that I fleshed Michelangelo out over the years.
Sure.
But the genesis of it was right there on a sheet of paper in black and white. They were looking for a surfer dude. Yeah. They gave the reference of Sean Penn in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
As the guy,
yeah.
And so we all auditioned for all 4 turtles, and they auditioned everybody in town. And so, yes. And so I was just trying to conjure up my best kind of surfer dude, and I was like, well, I was kind of, familiar with, the whole, it was during the Valley Girl kind of craze out here. And,
you're the Valley Boy.
The Valley Boy. Yeah. And so I would hear this kind of like, hate to say, but sort of like a drugged out, kind of stoner dude. And, and so I just tried to kind of do my version of that. See what I could throw at the wall and hope something sticks.
Okay. I don't know if you'll answer me honestly, because you are a humble guy and you want to be fair to your friends, but do you think that Michelangelo is the fan top favorite? Because I feel like he was.
I know that he's real popular.
Yeah,
I will.
I don't know if they probably don't just line up for you individually. They probably want to meet all of you, but look, and I'm even saying this honestly, Michelangelo was not my favorite character, only because I think he was so popular. I always liked to pick somebody else. I like Donatello.
Yeah. Now that's interesting you would say, because I have found over the years, so when a fan comes up to my table and we get to talking and stuff, and I'll ask them, do you have a favorite turtle? And you can always tell that they want to say Michelangelo, but that's not their favorite turtle, you know. And I say, it's cool. You know, who did you like? Well, Donatello. And so I remember asking this one guy who was, I met him at an event that Kevin Eastman was at in New Hampshire one year. And he was running an auction at this event. And he was, you know, dressed in a suit and tie, you know, very well put together, very intelligent. And I asked him, and he said Donatello was his favorite. And I said, really? And tell me why. And he said, you know, it's because I was never that popular when I was in school. I wasn't popular with the girls. I, you know, wasn't an athlete. I wasn't a jock. I was just smart. And Donatello taught me that it was okay to be smart. And when he said that, it was like all of a sudden I went, of course. Of course. And I looked at him and I said, dude, that is such a great take on it, because it gives me an understanding of how these characters individually are all so different. You know, Michelangelo's, you know, different. Michelangelo, Donatello, Raphael, Leonardo, they all have their strengths, but they also have their weaknesses. You know, and they've got their very particular identifying characteristics. And the beauty of the way they designed those back in the day was that it gave kids sort of 4 basic choices that you're going to be like one of these. You're going to be able to relate to one of these guys.
Yeah, and it's like diversity of character and skills and everything else, saying like, you're all family, but everybody's a little bit different. They're all unique. And I love Donatello because he was also funny. So he was smart and funny, which to me is like a great, dangerous combination that I've tried to convince myself over the years that I'm both of them. And like, you know, because Leonardo was the leader, which I liked, but he was too serious. He took himself too seriously. Raphael was pissed off and wanted to beat everybody up. In the cartoon, they weren't but like the films, they especially became more of that.
Right.
But Michelangelo was just kind of like, well, man, Donatello was not only funny, but I also loved that he was also like, I'm going to invent some stuff. I'm like, I like this guy.
Yeah. So it seemed like, you know, kids just had, you know, a number of really keen choices. But I do think Michelangelo, if there was a popularity contest, at least back in the day, it was Michelangelo. All right, dude, I'm not going to argue with you. If you insist, I'm the most, never mind.
You embody, I mean, like flick of a switch. It's amazing. So, you know, now the Comic-Con scene, especially when like Disney does like their big rollouts and all these things, has become a very well accepted event and way to actually make some income as an actor, especially somebody who's done these things in the past. Maybe not with your group, but other people who you know. Was there a stigma 12 years ago, even 10 years ago, 7 years ago, where people are like, you're like, that's not what we do. That's not real work, you know? Were people poo-pooing the whole Comic-Con idea?
Sure.
Anybody that you know?
Sure. Well, sure. Yeah. And, you know, I mean, obviously they're called Comic Cons from comic conventions.
Right.
And in most cases, you don't really have that many comics there anymore. Right. You know, they're pop culture conventions.
They
really are.
Yeah.
You know, and they all have their own thrust, their own area that they kind of, you know, like for instance, you know, we've been to one called Ranger Stop, which is a Power Rangers convention primarily, you know.
Yeah.
But they're also big Ninja Turtle fans, so we go and do those.
Yeah. Didn't they do a crossover at one point?
You know, I heard about that. I don't know. I know that I've seen Funko Pops.
Sure.
And others. I don't know if it's NECA or what company that puts out the Power. Because I signed one just this past weekend in Florida. It was the Yellow Power Ranger and Michelangelo. And
like as one character or as two separate characters?
As one character.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I've seen some of those crossover ones.
Yeah.
They're interesting.
So So,
yeah,
but no, I
Funko
know.
Pop is huge.
And Funko-
You guys have the really big museum kind of thing here, the store, the like multi-level store.
Right.
But like that's tied right into all of it because it's things from our childhood, and they
Right.
always release it in those Funko Pops and the other figurines like that. Huge market.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, it always cracks me up. Most of the cons we go to have professional wrestlers. That's always a big element to so many of these things.
Yeah.
And of course the celebs. You can't go to one of these without seeing William Shatner or George Takei or Mark Hamill.
Mark Hamill, who is a phenomenal voice actor. My God.
No kidding.
I didn't know until years later, I think for a lot of people, that he was the Joker in the Batman series.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mark's done a ton of work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Continues to.
So from your standpoint, what happens at these events? Do they just say, you're going to sit at this table and just sign things? Do you guys do any live, like acting out of scenes? Do you guys?
Yeah, we don't really perform so much unless we get like really nutty and are just in a
and
mood.
Then just do it.
And we start, we get out in the middle of the floor.
Against request not to. Right.
Right. And I'm like, please, no. But yeah, I mean, they have an area where they'll put all of us together, and we have a table, and we got our pictures on it, and folks will line up, and we'll come up, and we'll sign autographs for them, and hopefully it's not too crowded so that we get a chance to really spend some time with each of these fans, because that's really important to me. It's important to all of us.
And it's really important to them.
The five of us. And it's super important to
them.
Like
you might remember the event, but that person will remember that conversation.
Yep. And I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
And I know how important that is, because it would be important to me.
Sure.
If I were them and I were waiting in line for an hour, and I finally got up, and all the guy did was say, "Hi, what's your name?" Timmy, here. There you go. Next.
And those guys exist, though.
They do. And believe me, we hear about it.
I'm sure.
The fans, they're very vocal.
If you don't love this movie, I'm going to be so sad. I hate to put you on the spot.
I probably haven't even seen it.
Galaxy Quest?
I have not seen it.
They basically were in a Star Trek-like show in the film. And now they mostly just do these like nerd conventions.
Yeah.
Before this modern era, it was even before that, where like they were all showing up for this like Galaxy Quest show that they all grew up with. And Tim Allen was the William Shatner. So he loved the love and attention, and he would talk to people. He was more the ego. And Alan Rickman played like the Spock-like character, and he was so over it because he's like, I played Henry VIII on Broadway. Like, this is below me.
Yeah.
And okay, you have to watch that.
I will.
It is actually, but Bobby, you've seen it, right?
Long ago.
Okay, so Bobby's no help on this either.
He's a worthless human being.
I thought I hid that well.
But you've already shared some of these specific stories. Do you have one story from talking to a fan that really sticks out to you?
I do have a bunch. Yeah. And this certainly isn't a slight. All the rest, that have all been so special to me, because, not only do we have conversations, but so many of the fans, they bring me things, either that they have made, mostly things that they've made for me, handmade, whether they've sculpted a little. One of my favorite things is a pin that is the head of the Tick, which was a character that I did, and she's a sculptress, and she sculpted this little pin about this big, and hand painted it and everything. And it's a pin of the Tick's head. I love that, but I've got a bunch of things that are similar to that people have put time and effort and talent in, to making for me. Those are treasures with a capital treasure. I'm serious. I love these things. Trying to pick out one thing is hard, but I will say that this past summer, I was up in the Pacific Northwest at a Comic-Con up there, And a gentleman came to my table, and we got to chatting and stuff. And so I asked him what his background was, and he told me. And he had been in the military. And so while I won't mention the branch of the military that he was in, because he's still working. But this gentleman's his name is Mark, and Mark came up to me and he said, "Mr. Coleman, I have something for you." And I'm like, "Oh, how nice!" He hands me a patch with this got Velcro on the back of it. And the patch is a patch that I actually already have a new one of that somebody else had given me. And it just says, it's a picture of Michelangelo's head with a lot of teeth. And it just says, "Cowabunga, it is." But his patch that he gave me was pretty beat up. And it was, pretty browned, and obviously had seen a lot of either playing in the dirt or something. So he hands me this patch and he says, "I need you to have this patch." And I said, "Well, how kind, but tell me why." And he said, "Because, Mr. Coleman, you saved my life." And all of a sudden now it's serious. And I said, what do you mean I saved your life? And he said, "I was in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I had this patch that went on my left shoulder. And whenever I would go into battle, I would put my hand over this patch and I would think about, what would Michelangelo do going into this battle? And I would hear your voice just echoing in my head, telling me to be brave and be strong. And that Michelangelo laugh would send me out into battle with a sense of confidence that I just didn't have anywhere else." And as I'm hearing him tell this story, I just sort of start tearing up as I realized that he's starting to tear up too, telling me this. And I thought, this is the most profound thing, that something that I thought was just another job for me all those years ago ended up having this sort of impact on somebody, that they could find strength and comfort in that. I never in a million years would have imagined that. And I kind of didn't know what to say to him except, "Oh my gosh, thank you. Wow." And he said, "So I need you to have this patch." So it's one of my greatest treasures now. And I take it with me to cons and I put it out on my table. That stuff just doesn't happen. And if it weren't for these cons, it wouldn't have happened. So it's that kind of connection that I can get, from these people that keeps it real for me. And that's the best gift I could be given.
God, that's awesome. You got me choking up. I really appreciate you sharing that story. That is what this is all about. What I'll say on top of it is, because, there's been lots of studies with it and personal stories that I've heard from people, is you've saved more lives than you realize, because that one's very direct and obvious. But I talk about it nostalgia because I had a great childhood. I had both parents who loved and cared for me. We were dysfunctional as hell, but I had a good childhood. Think about all the kids who had to escape a bad home or a bad parent or a bad life, and they escaped through you.
Yeah. And we hear those stories all the time.
And not even all of them even realized they were doing that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people say, "I didn't have it that bad." But really,
yeah.
That's huge, man.
It is huge.
I'm trying not to be too sappy. I love that you get to experience it.
Yeah.
And get to reap the rewards of that.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Me too.
Can I ask some of your characters a quick question or two?
Sure.
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Well, you've put me on the spot. Now I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to stay here.
All right, Michelangelo, what is your favorite pizza topping?
Dude, that is so easy because I think it's everybody's favorite pizza topping. Dude, it is anchovy and hot fudge. Don't knock it till you tried it. Okay? Come on, Matt, you come on over the old turtle there. We'll just kick it down there and have a little anchovy and hot fudge pizza. Yeah. And then you can say, Cowabunga with me.
Okay, so Michelangelo, thank you for the invitation, but I've always wondered, why did you pick the nunchucks? I'm sure Master Splinter could have given you the choice of any weapon you wanted. Why the nunchucks?
Yeah, well, that's pretty easy because it has two parts, but they're tied together, so I can't lose one of them. So that I think Master Splinter knew that I'd probably be needing that help.
For those of you not watching and being able to see my face, you can probably hear my voice. The 14-year-old in me just fainted. I'm going to keep going. I have
turtle power, dude.
I'm a little shell-shocked.
But seriously.
To the tick, did you ever fully disclose your origin story to the public?
Egad, man. What do you think I am, an idiot? Don't answer that. No, of course I didn't.
Mr. Tick, what is your favorite pizza topping?
Well, let me see. Arthur, what do we have on that? DiGiorno's last night? I think, mushrooms.
That's very fitting. Last one. I won't make you jump through any hoops. Asking the NBC TV announcer guy, where can people see you next for a signing in person?
Okay. NBC Thursday. No, it won't be on NBC and it won't be Thursday. It's going to be in Memphis at the end of March and it'll be all new.
Okay. Thank you so much for humoring me there. That was a dream come true. And I think the audience will absolutely be floored and amazed with that.
And if you want to come exploring in outer space with me and my uncle Traveling Matt, you can do that too. And then we'll come back and eat doozer sticks. That's why they call me Gobo.
Oh, yeah.
Doozer sticks. You've had those before, haven't you?
I had a Fraggle Rock lunchbox. I know that.
There you go. That's all it takes. It was full of doozer sticks, right?
Well, the counselor confiscated all my doozer sticks. Is there anything you want to share or ask or talk about before we wrap up?
Yeah, no, there isn't. You know, this has been a blast. It's been a great chat with you. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
I mean, you not only have a friend, you have a fan over here. So that the honor is mine, and it is like, this is phenomenal. Just like meeting you for the first time, when you said goodbye to me as Michelangelo, I told Bobby on the phone later, I'm like, you realize like part of me pooped my pants and died at that moment, right? Because I was like, it was incredible. And then you made our little thank you cameo at the end of season 2 here on the show. And I was just like,
oh, that's right.
I'm like, how is this life? This is just so cool. And now all these thousands of people get experience that same thing, even if just for a few minutes. You taking this much time out is beyond, like, words cannot describe the appreciation I have.
Well, thank you, brother.
I'd like to do kind of a random, slightly off-topic question for the end of each episode. And mine for you is, outside of what we discussed, like living in that time when things were great, just as a human, what makes you nostalgic?
What makes me nostalgic? Looking at my grandkids, looking in their eyes, looking at their faces, these sweet little ones. I've got 8, and my oldest grandson is 23, and my youngest granddaughter is, she's 4 months old today.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah. Happy month anniversary.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's a dream. And her big sister, Remy, is her name is Olivia, and her big sister's name is Remy. And Remy is going to be 4 in March. And then I've got another granddaughter. I can't name just 2 of them without naming the rest of them. So then I've got a 12-year-old granddaughter, whose name is Tatum, and then grandson who is going to be 16 in March. His name is Zephyr. And then I've got a grandson named Leo, who is 11. And then I've got 3 grandsons with my oldest son in Denver, and they are Ben is my oldest, and then Shane is the middle one, and Shane is 21, just turned 21. Turns 21 tomorrow. That's what it is. And then his younger brother Casey, who is a freshman at the University of Colorado, which is where I went to school in Boulder. And not only that, but Casey, for his freshman year, lives in the same dorm I lived in 1972. How about that?
Wow.
So yeah, those are my 8 grandkids, and I love each and every one of them, just beyond. And they're really the joy of my heart. My kids are too. And so each of them, when I think of them, but especially the little ones when they're little, that's what gets me. Well, now that I think about it, Matt, it's not just when they're little. The little ones just remind me of when my kids were little, and that gets me nostalgic because I was a young dad. I was 21 when my oldest was born, and she was so special. Well, I say was, like she's not anymore. She is so special to me. All my kids are. But my firstborn, when she was born, boy, I remember that like it was this morning. And that gets me nostalgic. It will get me crying too. Just because I love them so much and they mean so much to me, So, yeah.
Dare I say it, I think that love and that gratitude and all of those feels you have come out in your characters, and that is why people love you right back. And that's a beautiful thing.
Oh, I have a question for the tick. It's a pizza question.
Hold on, we have...
Oh, no.
Who let this kid in the room? All right, Go ahead.
Hey, Mr. Tick.
Yes, you're a good citizen.
When you eat pizza, what do you use to eat it with? Do you use your hand or a...
fork? No. A spoon. Oh, wait, that was a little... Spoon. Spoon.
You.
Yes, you're welcome. Yes, indeed. And don't count your weasels before they pop, dink.
If you haven't watched that cartoon, you have to go back and watch it. It was ahead of its time.
It
had
certainly
wry
was.
humor that I think went over all of the kids' heads. Townsend, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for doing what you do. And thank you for just being a good human out there creating art that matters to us.
Thank you.
And, when all of this nostalgia and all these things happen and this new generation of guys my age were playing video games and people are like, you need to grow up. To all you out there, that's the trap. If you learned anything from this episode is that's not what you're supposed to do. Stay a kid. Stay young. We'll see you next time.
We just went there. Now you can go to thegoingtherepodcast.com for links to all the podcast platforms, our socials, and of course, YouTube. While you're at it, give us a rating, share with a friend, and subscribe.
This podcast is brought to you in part by its host and Frame One Media, in association with Kaylee Williams, Joe Calley, and Bobby Thomas.